The cabin had survived a mafia war, it had survived armed enemies, it had survived a snake, but apparently it was about to be destroyed by one terrified actress. I am not sleeping alone. Van stood in the middle of the hallway wrapped in a blanket like a warrior preparing for battle. No, Frick rubbed his forehead. Van, there are no snakes. How do you know? Because I checked. What if it has friends? Frick closed his eyes. Jungkook, standing nearby with a coffee mug in his hand, silently turned and walked outside. Where is he going? Van whispered. To save his sanity, Frick answered. A minute later, Jungkook motioned for Frick to follow him outside. The moment the cabin door closed, Jungkook spoke. You are sleeping with her tonight. Frick froze. I beg your pardon? She won't sleep alone. Frick stared, Jungkook stared back. The snow continued falling, and Wolf howled somewhere in the distance. Neither man moved. Jungkook, Frick said carefully, you really need to stop saying things like that. Jungkook frowned. What things? Sleep with her tonight? A pause, and Jungkook rolled his eyes. You know what I meant. Yes, but if Sia heard that sentence, I would be attending my own funeral. Jungkook looked unimpressed. She's scared. My girlfriend is scarier. That is your problem. No, Frick corrected. That become your problem when Sia murders me. For the first time that night, Jungkook almost smiled, almost, and his expression returned to normal. You will stay in my room with her. A very suspicious silence. Frick looked at him carefully, then, unfortunately for his own safety, he spoke. Then why not sleep beside her yourself? Jungkook's eyes narrowed immediately. What? I mean, she clearly feels safer around you. The cold breeze passed between them. Jungkook remained silent, very silent, the dangerous kind of silent. Frick swallowed. I'm just saying. Don't. Okay. A pause, then Frick ruined everything. Would you not be jealous? The second the word left his mouth, he wanted it back immediately. Jungkook slowly turned his head toward him. The expression on his face became unreadable. Why would I be jealous? Frick blinked. Good question. A very dangerous question. Because she likes you. Jungkook stared at him. And most men would notice that. Fair. Jungkook folded his arms. She has a crush. Obviously, she'll get over it. Maybe. Probably. Definitely not. Jungkook shot him a warning look. Frick immediately looked up at the sky. Jungkook sighed sharply. She's my responsibility, that's all. Of course, she's under my protection. Absolutely, Jungkook, nothing else. Right, both men stared at each other, neither believed a word of that conversation. Finally, Jungkook shook his head. You talk too much, and you think too much. That earned him another call look. For a second, Frick genuinely thought he might get fired. Instead, Jungkook simply turned and started walking back toward the cabin. The man isn't scared of rival mafias, assassins, or bullets. A grin slowly appeared on his face, but one actress with a crush has him hiding in his room all day. The cabin had finally gone quiet, at least that was what Frick had hoped. Instead, he found himself standing in front of Kangwan, who was wrapped in a blanket and staring at him as if he had just suggested something unreasonable. Why can't you sleep alone, Ryan? Frick asked, sounding more frustrated than he intended. It wasn't about self control, it wasn't about trust, it was simply inappropriate. And the bed was barely big enough for one person. Ryan narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Have you washed your hands? Frick immediately knew what she was thinking about the snake. Hours had passed since he had carried that thing outside, yet she was still traumatized. He sighed heavily and sat on the edge of the bed. Yes, I have washed my hands. Wine still looked unconvinced. Twice, three times. With soap? Wine. She finally nodded, then crossed her arms. But why are you acting like I'm being unreasonable? I told you I'm scared. There are no snakes here anymore. How do you know? Because I checked. What if it's come back? It won't. What if it misses its family and returns? Frick stared at her one step back, the silence stretched. Then Frick rubbed his face. You know what? I'm not even going to answer that. Vine immediately pointed at him. See, you don't know. Frick groaned. Try to understand. I have a girlfriend. So? So? Frick repeated in disbelief. She will lose her mind if she finds out I shared a bed with Kung Wan. Vine shrugged. Then don't tell her. I tell her everything. That's actually kind of cute. Frick rolled his eyes. It's called being honest. She sighed dramatically. Fine, but what am I supposed to do? I can't control being scared. Frick glanced toward the door. I'm not the only person in this cabin. Vine instantly knew he meant. He will never agree. Frick couldn't even argue with that. Please, it's only for a couple of days. I'll stay on my side. You stay on yours. Frick looked at the ceiling as if asking for divine assistance. None arrived eventually. Fine. One phrase brightened immediately. You are the best. No, Frick muttered. I am an idiot. 2 hours later, Frick was sleeping on the very edge of the mattress. Ward had done exactly what she promised. She stayed as far away possible. Everything was peaceful until it wasn't. In a dream, Frick appeared holding a giant snake walking toward her, smiling. The snake lifted its head, its tongue flicked, and Juan bolted upright with a scream. Frick nearly rolled off the bed. What happened? He switched on the battery lamp. The room filled with a dim yellow light. The door burst open. Jungkook appeared instantly. What happened? Van pointed at Frick with trembling hands. Me? Snake. Frick eyes widened. Oh, come on. He stepped forward. Big mistake. Van immediately scrambled backward into the corner. Don't come near me. She covered her face. Her entire body trembled. Frick looked helplessly toward Jungkook. Simply gestured toward the door. Leave. Frick didn't argue for once. He quietly walked out. The moment Frick disappeared, Vine like slightly Jungkook approached slowly and sat on the edge of the bed, leaving a respectful distance between them. There is no snake. Vine slowly lowered her hands, her eyes were red. Frick left. Yeah. She let out a shaky breath and immediately asked, You are not leaving too, right? Jungkook almost sighed. What exactly did she think was going to happen? A giant anaconda was going to crash through the window and carry her away? Still, he nodded. I'll stay. Promise? I promise. Van finally lay back down, closed her eyes, opened them again. Jungkook was still there. 5 minutes later, she checked again, still there. Another 5 minutes, still there. Eventually, sleep won. Jungkook looked down at her sleeping face. For a long moment, he simply sat there watching. The room was quiet. The forest outside was silent. And somehow, for the first time in days, she looked peaceful. A small smile appeared on his face before he immediately looked away. Realizing he had been staring, his hand moved gently to her hair. I am sorry, he murmured quietly. His voice was barely above a whisper. Because of my mistake, you had to leave your entire life behind. His eyes softened, but I'll send you back, a pause, back to your world. Back to the stage, back to the cameras, back to being Kangwayan, the superstar. Next morning, Van woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. For days, every thought had somehow started revolving around one person. John Jungkook, the man who annoyed her, ignored her, protected her, and somehow managed to become the first man she genuinely wanted to confess to. She had spent half the night thinking about him, and by morning she had made a decision she would tell him. Whether he accepted her feelings or rejected them didn't matter anymore. At least she wouldn't spend the rest of her life wondering what if. So, without wasting another second, she left her room. Straight toward Jungkook's room, she knocked, no answer. She opened the door, empty. A small frown appeared on her face. Maybe he was outside. She checked the yard, the wood chopping area, the porch, nothing. Finally, she walked into the kitchen where Frick was making coffee. Where's Jungkook? Frick glanced up briefly. He left. Van blinked. Left? Yeah, wine. Where? Soul. The word hit harder than she expected. For a second, she simply stood there, then forced a smile. Oh, silence. Okay. She turned around and quietly walked back to her room. The door closed behind her, and suddenly, the confession she had practiced all night felt completely useless. A few minutes later, Frick entered her room and stepped on the bed, staring out the window, lost in thought. He sat beside her. What happened? Vine laughed softly, but it sounded sad. I don't know. She looked down at her hands. I finally decided I wanted to tell him. Frick immediately understood, but what's the point now? She continued quietly. He's gone. Her smile disappeared. He doesn't even like me. Frick sighed. It is not like that. Vine shook her head. It is. Her voice cracked slightly. I wore full clothes. I ate ramen every day. I even washed my hair with kennel water. Frick almost laughed despite the situation, but Vine continued. I listened to everything he said, yet he barely talked to me. She looked away. I think he left because I made him uncomfortable. Frick immediately shook his head. Vine, he didn't leave because of you. He left because he had to. She looked up. What do you mean? Frick leaned back. This morning, a man found the people responsible for targeting you. The room became quiet, so he went after them. Vine stared. He what? He went to finish it. Frick's voice was calm. As long as they're alive, you are not safe. For the first time, Van realized what Jungkook had actually been doing all this time while she complained about ramen, while she argued about shampoo, while she worried about Snake. He had been preparing for war. He left a message for you. Van immediately straightened, hope instantly returning. What message? For one stupid second, she imagined something romantic, something meaningful, something that proved she wasn't the only one feeling this way. Frick smiled apologetically. He said he will be returning to Seoul very soon. The hope vanished instantly. Oh, that was all she said. Just oh. Because somehow that hurt more than rejection. Frick watched her quietly, then spoke. Don't think he hates you. Don't think he hates you. And didn't answer. Don't think he dislikes you either. She finally looked up. Then why? Frick thought for a moment, then chose honesty. Because you and him belong to a completely different worlds. Van frowned. What does that mean? It means you are Gangwan. The entire country knows where you go, what you wear, what you eat, who you are with, everything. Van stayed silent, and Jungkook lives in the opposite world. Frick voice softened, a world where secrets keep people alive. A long silence followed, then he added, if he ever loved someone, he would want her hidden, protected, from the danger. Vine lowered her eyes, and that's impossible with me. Frick nodded slowly. You are independent. You have dreams, a career, a life. He would never ask you to give that up. Vine slowed hard. What if I wanted him? Her voice became quieter. I would have to leave my career. Fink didn't answer immediately, then probably. The room became silent again, but not because he wants that. It is because he knows what happens to the people close to him. Frick looked toward the window. He would rather stay single forever than force someone into that life. Vine listened quietly, then Frick added one final detail, and he doesn't even want children. That surprised her. Really? Frick nodded. He says nobody deserved to grow up in this world. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Vine leaned back against the bed, a sad smile appearing on her face. That actually makes sense. And for the first time, she understood that maybe the biggest obstacle between wasn't a lack of feelings. It was the life they had both chosen long before they ever met. To be continued.